From the majesty of Athens to the depths of Hades, no ground was held sacred by Kratos.
With every city you destroy, the wrath of Olympus grows.
Beginning with a furious battle in the Aegean Sea, God of War takes the gamer on a journey across historical locales and mythological spaces, each with its own unique character and threats to the former Spartan captain.
There is safe passage through the deadly sands, but only those who hear and follow the siren's song will discover it.
Level design is a lot about coming up with the puzzles and the layout and the pacing of an area, and coming up with the themes and how they integrate with the story.
Amidst the diversity of environments, they all have one thing in common: a grand scale with larger-than-life set pieces waiting for Kratos to conquer.
So many levels in these games are these just massive, massive environments where Kratos is almost just this tiny little character running through it. Do you ever think there was any danger of diminishing your protagonist?
Not at all.
He kills that big thing.
Right. It gave you that sense of scale, you know, so that when you did zoom in and see the character very big on screen, you carried that visual memory with you, and you were like, oh my God, this thing is huge. Like in the first one, just that little shot of Kratos sidling outside and seeing Kronos below. You know, these images carry with you as the gamer, so you're remembering those later when you're not seeing it, but the implication is there. So those, I think, were a really
But these guys took it to the next
level. I think a big part of it is the camera, what you're doing with the camera, and trying to zoom in as close to Kratos as possible. We would always try to make sure that we could get as close that we could see the edge of his blades on the screen, so that you could always see the enemies. You know, that way you know that you can engage with the person you're fighting with, and then we would try to pull out as far as we could in the next shot, and then push back in, all doing it in real time.
What's amazing about the stories and the games is the fact that, yeah, you might feel small, or you might feel small, visually to that, but the fact that you change the world. This game, you don't just live in this world. Kratos changes this world as the games go on. And being able to change something that's that big is one of the reasons why this game is so epic.
And it also makes him feel so much bigger. It's not just about the scene and the scale of the scene, but it's the distance of the journey. And he basically, in God of War 2, I think, does the best job of that of any of the games. I mean, he goes on this journey to the edge of the earth. And this one guy did this. He got on Pegasus and he flew across the ocean, and he goes under the world and he fights Atlas, and remembering that stuff when you're playing the game and kind of compiling all the stuff that you did in the last 10, 15 hours or whatever. It's like, holy shit, this guy is bigger than everything.
Again, it's not really just about the size of what you're fighting. It's the repercussions that it has. When you finish that certain portion of a game or level or boss, it's what happens after that. One of the cool things about God of War 2 is just purely walking across those horses, and when you have the feeling that you're just walking in the environment, it's one thing. But then when you drag everything, out in the sea, suddenly you realize it's not about the size, it's the repercussions of what you're going to do to that. That's the important part about making games. And that's why I agree with Dave. It's like finding a different way of actually doing it. It's not just about size. It's not just about...
Size doesn't matter?
Yeah, well, that came out also the wrong way.
I agree, the concept of the size and the spectacle is really good, but you make a valid point about the whole connection to spectacle. Just having spectacle for spectacle's sake is kind of retarded. It's just so that you can have something on the back of the box. But the idea of connecting spectacle meaningfully into the gameplay, into the player's experience, so that it doesn't just feel like, I built a big level because I can build a big level. Aren't I awesome? These games actually allow me to get inside of them and be part of that experience. So.
Was there any challenge in keeping the epicness of these environments, consistent through the games, but putting them on the PSP?
Absolutely. Oh my God. It's like everything that's in your head. The one thing that we did when we developed both Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta, we didn't think of them as PSP games. As a matter of fact, I think at the very beginning, when we first talked PSP games, the idea was to turn around. It should be like a 2D side scroller. It should be Kratos, swinging his blade, 2D side scroller, climbing, not really a God of War game. And we had to push and we had to go, you know what? No, we need to replicate everything about God of War on this platform. It's all good when you say that to somebody and you go we're gonna do it. And then you gotta deliver and everybody's looking at you waiting for you to do that. And yes, in your head, in concept art, in just creating the worlds, it all works. As soon as you gotta get it in there, It's like, literally it's like shoving this big thing in this little hole, and you're just going like, I can't do it, and every single time, I know.
Sorry.
I saw that.
Because you should have a button like Dr. Evil, and anybody who makes a fucking cock reference, boop. And so, you know what? We'd be the only ones left so far. That's all I'm saying.
You're making up for it, Jaffe.
What's that?
I said you're making up for it.
Yeah,
No.
So much class.
All right, Olivia. All right.
Oh, snap.
I think there were a lot of things we didn't even consider early on that actually made a big difference. Was like God of War, until the time we'd done Chains of Olympus, already existed on like a 4:3 aspect ratio on a regular TV. So there was a lot of vertical real estate we didn't have on the PSP. I mean, it's a 16:9 display. And so having a character who has aerial combat, like he's constantly jumping off the screen, So we kind of picked a camera distance that felt fairly safe, so you could see him, you could see the action. And we're like, okay, let's kind of leave that alone and see if we can get everything to work. And it does. And then we followed the playbook essentially of, these epic, big grand scale shots. We put them in there. And I think with all those things, they kind of work together, and it still feels like God of War. And then when we went to make Ghost of Sparta, we're like, okay, let's try like to be even more cinematic about it. Let's keep the camera out and let's let him get kind of small. And playing off of these things that you were talking about in the character design, like he's got this ashen skin. He pops on screen. He's got these chains that glow and he's whipping around. They're way bigger than he's ever gonna be. So if you show him really close up, even on the PSP, and he fills most of the screen, and then you pull out because a giant monster just came out of the ocean and he gets really tiny, it's okay, because so long as he's still readable and he lights, it's going to work, and it's going to still feel epic. And I think even on the handheld, people are just going to be surprised that it still works.
Yeah, you just got to hope that your PSP doesn't blow up or something like that. Seriously.
All right, so Dana, let's talk a little bit about Ghost of Sparta, because we actually get to delve into the lost city of Atlantis in this, which is something we all know, and yet we know nothing about it. So what kind of research went into developing this?
I mean, we kind of looked into some of the ways that people had thought, Atlantis had sunk. We were like, where could it possibly be? We looked at locations. We actually looked at some of the work that had been done previously for God of War on Atlantis. Like, apparently Atlantis was a place that was slated to be in, what is it, one or two games? Two games now.
No, in God of War 2.
Just in God of War 2? Okay, in God of War 2 even. And there was some fantastic concept art that was done for that game. And we're like, oh, they had already some ideas. So we looked into all that. We kind of factored that in. And then we started having a little bit of fun with it, as God of War seems to do with everything. We were like, well, if there's a city of Atlantis, what better way for it to disappear than having your main character be responsible for the end of it.
Nice. The strength of a protagonist is defined largely by the antagonist standing in his way, and with God of War, there was no shortage of gods, mortals, or monsters attempting to stop Kratos on his path of vengeance. So here's a look at the villains of God of War.